Hi there, welcome. Um, do you pronounce your name Muzzy?
You got it. Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay, I know you spoke to our chair, Marielle.
Mhm.
I'm kind of going to lead the meeting a little bit today. So in case you did want to mention something that both of you know that I probably wouldn't know, you go right ahead. Just because she's going to be a little bit preoccupied. I think she's still going to hop on the meeting though.
Okay, I'll follow your lead.
Awesome.
How are you doing this evening?
Doing great.
Good.
It's Thursday, you know. Yeah, and it's a nice day outside. Wish I could take a break from the computer, but yeah.
Well, it's good to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you.
There she is.
Awesome.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Hi, Marielle.
Hi.
Okay, so what we're gonna do now, we're just gonna wait to meet quorum. So we'll wait for a few members to join, and once we meet quorum, we could start.
Hi, good evening.
Good
Hey,
evening.
Miguel.
What's your first name? I know it just says M. Guadalupe.
Oh, that's weird. It's Miguel.
Miguel. Hi, Miguel.
I'll rename it. No worries.
Sure.
There we go.
Hi, Miguel. Hi, Muzzy.
Hi, Marielle.
Hi, Mariel.
Hello, hello. Just so you're aware, in case Emily hasn't shared. So I'm away, and so I'll kind of be off camera most of the call, and Emily's going to kindly kind of lead on some of this. But you'll have after we reach quorum, we'll kind of start with kind of welcome and intros as we usually do. We'll ask you to present for 5 minutes, and then we'll have 10 minutes for kind of question and answer from the committee and the community. Because we do have a really packed agenda this evening, so we will kind of be quite strict with that time.
Got it.
But obviously, we can continue the conversation, via email and things like that following this evening's exchange. But again, thank you for joining this evening.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you. And thanks for providing that context.
Sure.
Hey, Marshall, welcome.
Hey, Emily. I'm sort of eating, so I'll be in the background.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I'm also having my first meal. It's gonna be weird to watch. It's a lot of lettuce.
Oh, I'm sorry, Emily. I'm walking right now, or I'm about to walk. And then once I'm back, I will turn my camera on.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Hey, Jaren. No, you have to tell me how to say your name properly because I
You
always
got it
say
right.
how I want. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Welcome. We're just waiting to meet quorum and then we'll get started with the lineup,
That sounds great. Thanks for having me.
of course. Hey, Richard. Hey, Bruce, welcome.
Emily, I think we might have quorum. I counted 6. And that includes Tanisha, as one of the new members, because as you know.
Oh, yeah,
Mhm.
awesome, great. Okay. So let's get started. Chanel, we don't have to like click on anything to record or none of that because it's all live. Awesome, thank you. So welcome everyone to the Housing and Human Services Committee and Community Board 12. I'm Emily Marte, the co-chair of this committee. And I guess we'll start with introductions and then I'll do a little announcement right now. I don't know if Marielle can speak or.
Yes, I can.
Okay,
I'm out.
I know you're
Thank-
walking.
yes, yes, I am walking. Thanks, Emily. Good evening, everyone. Currently walking, but we'll turn my camera on once I'm seated. Marielle Ali, Housing and Human Services Chair. Thank you to Emily for kind of leading this this evening, but I'll be on. Over to Bruce.
Hey, okay. Oh, sorry. Good evening, everybody. Here I am, Lower Washington Heights, also on traffic and transportation, and look forward to a great meeting tonight. Thank you.
I'll choose someone else. Richard?
I'm Richard Allman, board member, committee member.
Marshall?
Yes, I'm Marshall Vanderpool. I am a public member with the Housing and Human Services Committee, formerly First Vice President, Dyckman Resident Association. And apologize, I'm going to be munching for this first part, so I will be off camera, but I will be here. I'll land my plane now. Thank you.
Of course. And our newest member, Tanisha.
Hey everybody, new board member Tanisha. I'm currently on 2 meetings. I'm trying to see which committees I would like to join, but this committee, probably for sure, housing is a big passion of mine that we work on in my community organizing. So happy to be here and happy to participate. Thank you.
Great. Happy to have you here, Tanisha. Hopefully you decide to stay here with us. We definitely need your input on things, especially with the housing crisis going on. So welcome, everyone. And again, I'm the co-chair. I've been a member in the community board a bit over a year. I came in as like substitute, and then I just started learning things. So cool. So we have a very jam-packed agenda, and we're going to start, right away with the presentations. Just letting the presenters know, we'll give you guys 5 minutes to present, and then we'll have around 10 minutes for discussion. If people have a lot of questions and all of that, I'll give them around 10 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next discussion. So the agenda will go, we'll talk have a presentation from Bowery Residents Committee, or BRC, in Inwood. Then we'll have Elcia Vasquez from Palante, Harlem. And then we'll have Jaren speak from We Act for Environmental Justice. And afterward, we'll have a discussion on the Housing Manhattanites project that we have with Mark Levine, the Manhattan Borough President. And that's something that we'll collaborate with the Land Use Committee on. And we'll have monthly updates from elected representatives and go on from there. Okay, so awesome. Let's start with Bowery Residents Committee, BRC. We have Muzzy and Miguel here. Welcome. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be with you, joined by my colleague Miguel, and I'll jump right in. We are the Bowery Residents Committee. I'm the president and CEO, better known as BRC, as you said. We've been a housing and social services organization that started on the Bowery 50 years ago, founded by clients, the residents of the Bowery in the old lodging houses, and has grown over the years and across the city. We're in 4 of the 5 boroughs. We haven't found our way to Staten Island yet, not for lack of trying. We do a lot of things. We have outreach to those living unsheltered. We run shelters, safe haven, stabilization, and community residences, transitional housing. We run low-income and supportive housing. We serve about 3,500 people a day. We graduate about 4,500 people a year, about 1,000 of them to more independent living from where they've been. So it's a very much goal-oriented organization. It's not about helping people get in. It's about helping people achieve their potential, stability, and health and housing, and moving forward in their lives, and helping them overcome all the challenges, all the traumas, and all the bureaucracy that it takes to get back on your feet. So that's who we are. Like I said, we're across the city. We operate shelters as part of what we do, and over the past few years, we've moved from leasing buildings from landlords who profit from our work to using our own resources to build our shelters and housing. In fact, right across the river, as I know some members of the community board and the former DM came to visit, as have some of our elected representatives, right off Fordham Road, Landing Road in the Bronx. We built and opened in 2018 a 500-bed shelter and 137 units of low-income and supportive housing. We came to this site, 3972 10th Avenue, at the corner of 10th and 212th Street, the southwest corner, back in 2019. And through a variety of ways that we assessed the appropriateness of a site, we felt that this was an appropriate site, and we began the process of first evaluating it, seeing if we could purchase it, seeing if we could get a contract from the city. We've done all those things. I won't go through the long timeline. We did a lot of outreach, and along the way, we met Meredith Soren Horsford and Don Rice at the Dykeman Farmhouse Alliance, along with many others, Carol Stevens at Good Shepherd Church, and learned about the site's traumatic history, which I imagine folks here know. And so we stopped, we paused, and we spent about 2 to 3 years of listening to various stakeholders, both in the community. We had a bunch of listening tours and hearings during the pandemic. Several hundred people attended, as well as the descendant communities of enslaved Black people and Lenape people who occupied the site before we did, as well as our own staff and clients about the idea of developing a shelter on this site. And after all of that hearing and the recommendations, we created an advisory group that was independent of BRC, chaired by Meredith from the Dyckman Farmhouse Alliance, that Liz Ritter, I think, served on as well from CB12, and Natalie Espino from former Borough President Gail Brewer's office, and many others. The recommendations were move forward, but change what you're doing. Modify the design, modify the space. We don't want just a plaque to mark what was here. We want a memorial where people can learn and reflect and mourn and grieve and heal from those histories. And so we completely redid the design. We shrank the size of the space that was allocated to the shelter and created both an interior and exterior memorial space that we are in discussions with the Dyckman Farmhouse for them to operate while continuing to build a shelter. What is a shelter? In my mind and in the work we do, and like I said, we have many of them, and some of you have visited, and I welcome all to come see, right? Don't just go by my words, come see our work, because it's not what we do, it's how we do it. When we run a shelter, it's a place of healing, it's a place to repair, it's a place to recuperate, and it's a place, like I said, to move forward with your life to better things, overcoming all those challenges. So this will be a shelter for single men, 116 beds. It's one of our smallest shelters. The shelter across the river, 200 beds. Our shelter on 110th Street, 200 beds. Our shelter in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, 200 beds. Our shelter right here at 25th Street, where I work, 200 beds out of a total of 326 transitional beds that we have on this site. So we shrank the size from what the typical size of a city shelter and a BRC shelter is in order to incorporate the memorial, in order to be appropriate to the site. It'll be a 4-story building and lower down on the hill. As you know, the street slopes, so it won't overshadow the school. In fact, the school is taller than us when we're done. And I'm sure you have lots of questions of how we're going to operate it and what have you. But we started construction this month. It'll be about 18 to 24 months. As we always do, we believe in being a good neighbor. We've done a lot of community outreach, as I said already. Miguel particularly has led that effort with the community board, with elected officials, with Senator Jackson in particular has been very engaged with the public school next door, PS 98. But we're going to establish a community advisory committee that will meet on a regular basis, both during construction and after we open, because construction is obviously can be a concern as well as a shelter. And we are always and have always been, as our presence here today indicates, receptive to ideas, to suggestions, and always doing our best to answer questions. I may not always be able to tell you what you want to hear, but I'll always tell you the truth. So let me stop there. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, and I don't want to eat up the clock. Thank you.
Thank you, Muzzy. So let's see. Does anyone have any questions, members from? Okay. I see Tanisha, and I did see Bruce put something in the chat. So I think I saw Bruce first. So I'll say his question first. Not sure if he could speak now, so maybe I'll say it for him. Which shelter would you recommend we visit that is most like what your new one would be?
That's a really great question. Thank you. I would suggest the one, not just because it's convenient across the river, but because it is we built it. And part of the importance and the power and the success of what we do is design with dignity. Is creating spaces that really make people feel valued after lives where too often they've been discarded. So I would suggest the Landing Road residence, 237 Landing Road. And like I said, it's right across the University Heights Bridge, and love to have you come visit with us. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. And we have Tanisha.
Hi, thank you for the information. I was wondering, I might have missed it because, like I said, I'm on 2 calls. But do you only create shelters or do you do housing too?
Oh, we do housing as well. In fact, we're working on a project on 155th and Amsterdam that will be supportive in low-income housing. It'll be 199 units, 60% for people graduating out of shelters, formerly homeless, and 40% low income to the community that goes through the NYC Connect lottery.
Okay, well, I
And,
would
and
love to
across
come.
across the river, we did both. We did both the shelter and housing.
Yes, I'm asking because, I think that it's better to put people in quality, affordable housing than to keep creating shelters and funneling that money through the system. So I would love to come visit not only your shelter, but also the affordable housing. Thank you.
Wonderful. You're welcome. Thank you for asking.
Great. And Richard?
Both some of your remarks and some of the questions have talked either about long-term housing or other pieces of the housing puzzle. And you've talked about that some, and I'd like you just to ask you to expand a little further on exit strategies. What takes
Sure.
people from shelters into the next chapters of their lives, and what do you do that helps that to be sustainable?
Great. I appreciate the question. People's needs vary for sure. And so we don't just take a one-size-fits-all approach. The most important thing to our work is individualized care, right? So the first thing is listening. It's an important part of what we do, is not trying to fit people into a box, but trying to hear who they want to be. And often those are not the traditional bureaucratic measures. They're deeper and richer things. There's one person I talk about when I talk at length about this in training for staff and others in trying to inform and educate is a gentleman named Stanley who struggled for a long time with homelessness and addiction. And he had it all and lost it all. And he didn't want to get sober, and he didn't want to be told to get sober. He knew he was struggling. And as we listened, what we realized was what Stanley's goal was to be a dad again. He wanted to have the respect of his kids again. And as we began to understand Stanley and what his motivations were, then we could help him see that sobriety isn't a goal, it's a tool, it's a means to an end. And that a job is a means to an end. And Stanley put it all together and he participated. We have a job training center across the river. We do workforce development. On this site, we will have both healthcare, substance use, housing and job counseling, so that depending on what that person's needs are, once they set their goals. But first, the important thing is to listen and understand, who do people really want to be? And then say, okay, this is who you want to be. These are the struggles you're dealing with. Let's see how we can put together a plan for you. And one of the things about BRC is because of our size, we're a large organization that does a lot of things. A lot of those resources that people have, we don't have to send out to some other organization. We can do it ourselves. Drug treatment, we can do if that's the issue. Job training and workforce development, we can do. And even in workforce development, we don't do what other organizations do. Throw everyone in a uniform, give them a bucket and a broom. We find the right opportunity for them, the right training opportunity for them, and the right job for them. We don't make a deal with Home Depot and say, oh, have pity on our clients and give them minimum wage jobs, and then feel like now we've got to serve Home Depot and now we've got to deliver for them. We don't have those kind of relationships. Our relationships are with our clients. And because they see that and they trust us, trust is the foundation of success. So that's a little bit of it. And I hope that got to your question with a little specificity and a little bit of philosophy.
It does. If I can ask a quick follow-up on that, are there shareable numbers that talk about your success in?
Absolutely. I can tell you, right. I can tell you that 4,500 people graduated from our programs last year. More than half of those who left. Not everybody makes it. Not everybody makes it. This is hard work and people have been through a lot of trauma. They're more likely to make it because of the work we do than not doing it. And our shelters perform above the average of what city shelters do. 900 moved to more independent housing. And yes, I can send you specific numbers. We actually just had this week, we're going through last week and this week, we're very data driven. Our quarterly performance meetings with all our program directors where we're talking about numbers. Now, we're not trying to meet a number. We're trying to see what are the patterns and trends that are happening so that if we see clients achieving their goals, what's the secret there that we're doing, and let's replicate it. If we see that if we're doing not as well as we used to be doing, what's driving that? Is it internal? Is it external? Is it something we need to change? Is it something we need the city to change? And we are fierce advocates with the city when city policies need to be changed, when they are impediments to the success of those we serve. We'll get you some numbers, Richard, for sure.
Great questions, Richard. Did you have something else to say, Richard?
Eventually, but I think I should defer to others at this point.
Yeah, we'll come right around. I see Marshall and then Bruce.
Hey, Muzzy. I recall you coming to one of our meetings before, and I believe you're really doing some great work here. And I guess one of my questions is that, okay, so now you're breaking ground, and one of the things I'm thinking from the last meeting was that there's the issue with the Indian burial ground or Native American burial ground. And I was wondering how that's reflected now in the final planning that you're going to be building.
Thanks for asking, and thanks for remembering those meetings that we had. So we immediately hired a consultant with extraordinary experience, and who used to be when we were both fresh out of college. We were cubicle mates in the Dinkins administration, and that's Peggy King Yorday. She was Peggy King then, Peggy King Yorday now. And those of you who don't know her, she was the one who led the effort that saved and established the African burial ground and made it a national monument, a federal national monument, make part of the Park Service. And she continues to work on that project and many projects across the country and around the globe. And so when we learned of this site's history, which others knew and we did not, it was known but not well known, I immediately called Peggy. I knew that she could give wisdom, and she's been working with us now since October 20 when we learned of this. So coming on 3 years, and through her work and working with folks at Schomburg, John Reddick from Smithsonian, Elizabeth Kennedy, the architect, and there are two historic components to this, Marshall. There is the site was a burial ground for enslaved people. Learning from Meredith and Don at Dyckman Farmhouse, most likely part of the Dyckman-Nagel plantation of New York, where Black people provided free labor so that the Dyckmans and Nagels could get rich. That burial ground was here. It was destroyed in 1903, as documented in the New York Times. Some of the remains were moved to the Museum of Natural History. And so there's that element of the history, and we did an archaeological survey as well as a spiritual ceremony back in May of 21. Spiritual ceremony first, the archaeological survey afterwards, just to make sure that there were no more remains present. But then even before that, as you know, it was a ceremonial site, a spiritual site for the Lenape people before even white people came to this land, yet alone enslaving Black people and bringing them here. And so we reached out to the Lenape Cultural Center and the descendants of the Lenape community, the Oklahoma tribe in Delaware, and they all became participants in this as well. Curtis Zaninga, who's the director of cultural resources for the Delaware tribe, the descendants of the Lenape participated in this as well. And then, like I said, we hired both a Lenape, an indigenous, and a Black architect who specialized in memorials and ceremonial and spiritual sites. And so what we've done is taken a significant portion of the first floor on the 212th Street side. And both interior, there will be a very quiet and reflective site that will reflect the history of this site, that this had been a burial ground. And then there will be an outdoor space as well, open to the sky, adjacent to the school or adjacent to the parking lot that's adjacent to the school's property, where the architects and the artists are designing a Lenape sculpture, very much in the tradition of the Lenape people. That is a place that will connect with the spirits in the sky. It is still in development. And then, as I mentioned at the outset, discussions with the Dyckman Farmhouse for them, not us, to be the custodians of the site, no rent, so that it will be a place for reflection, it'll be a place for learning, it'll be a place for connecting, and it'll be a place for remembering that history that sadly is still too present today. And so connecting that the trauma of slavery and racism and destruction of people's cultures that happened hundreds of years ago, sadly is still too present in our world today. That in a city where 25% of the population is Black, 60% of those experiencing homelessness are Black. And while there may be less mass incarceration, there still is mass incarceration. There still is incredible disparities and denials of opportunities against non-white communities in this city. As progressive as we believe we are, we're not where we need to be. And to create a center where people who continue to experience these traumas can heal and overcome them. Look, I wish we could, what Tanisha was saying before, just do housing. When we can end homelessness, but we're not going to end homelessness until we end poverty, until we end racism, until we end marginalization of people with behavioral health challenges. And so until we can do that, and until we can build all the housing we need to give people an alternative to the streets or to incarceration. And that's what a good quality shelter like those that we run provide.
Well, thank you, Muzzy. This is great.
Thank you, Marshall. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Muzzy. So we have Bruce, Richard, and Marielle lined up. So let's keep it brief, just so that we could move along. No, it's for everyone, not just not just you, Muzzy. So let's go to Bruce.
Thank you, Muzzy, and thank you, Marshall, for that great question. Muzzy, what would you like from this committee tonight in terms of a statement or whatever support you need from us?
I always welcome support. I appreciate that. If that's feasible and possible. I know that shelters are controversial, and so my requests are usually humble and small. At a minimum, because I don't always expect everyone to agree with me. I think the most important thing that I want people to, outside this gathering, to appreciate and understand is that we come with the best of intentions. We come with professionalism and experience. We come with respect. We come with a commitment that I think we've demonstrated and will continue to demonstrate, to always listen, to always engage, to always respond in thoughtful, respectful ways. And if we can just be acknowledged for that, I would be extraordinarily grateful. And if we could get a statement of support, I would be overwhelmed.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And before you go, Richard, because I did see a comment before you raised your hand in the chat from Aisha. She asked, will the community be informed of the opportunities that you offer?
So the way the shelter system works, not the way I'd like it to work, and we say the Serenity Prayer a lot at BRC, the city, we do not decide these exact individuals who can live in the shelter. They are assigned by the city through the central intake. We do decide who we hire. So there will be 67 job opportunities here. There's 67 positions associated with this. We're a great organization, the unionized organization represented by DC 37, with great salaries, great benefits, although the city could do better in giving us more. And I'm fighting the mayor. I wrote an op-ed in the Daily News about that with David Jones from Community Service Society and Phoebe Boyer from Children's Aid, that the mayor and the city council need to give us the cost of living adjustments, our workforce, that the municipal workforce are getting. And I'm going to be meeting with the DC 37 president to figure out how we can pull that off together. So job opportunities are there, and opportunities to tour the site before we open, absolutely. After we open, for sure. And as somebody asked earlier, I think it was Bruce or Richard, to come across the river and tour that as well. So we do that in a managed way out of respect for this is a place where people live. So we have certain ground rules on that, like no photography. But we would love for you to see what we do both across the river. And another reason is, as I said, I think it was to Bruce's questions about designing with dignity that I think it's important to, we create open space within the perimeter of the shelter so that people can go outside without having to go out on the street. Of course, people are free. It's not a prison. We don't want it to be a prison to go out. And we want people to go out every day, to go to work, to go look for work, to go to school, to go do the things they need to do to put their lives together that involve outside the perimeters, but to have a place after dinner to be able to go outside and relax and see the sky and do it in a way and in a place that is private is what we've done across the river. And it does discourage some of the sometimes negative behavior that is sometimes present in some of our programs. And so it's very conscious, it's very strategic, it's very smart, and it's very respectful, precisely.
So just one addition, the memorial itself is also open. When it
Yes.
opens, it will be open to the public.
What date did you guys say it would be open?
I think we're expecting construction. So we just started. I would say that about early 2025, early mid 2025 is when I think we'll be opening.
Great. And we have Richard and Marielle, and maybe we should move along after this, even though I have many questions, but yes.
I'm going to see if I can sneak two quick questions in here. If not, I'll settle for one. What you're proposing for the burial ground in respect of the burial ground site makes sense to me. But I suspect there are stakeholders who know more about the issue, more about the history. And I'm wondering, to the extent you can talk about it, is there still some opposition out there? Are there some questions that we may not be asking that are somewhere out there?
So two separate questions, right? So the first question, the concept, the design, and the decision about the memorial site is not ours. It is we created the advisory group for the Inwood Sacred Site. They are the ones who were stewarding that we can send you. It's on our website. Their report, their recommendations, and it was that was the basis that informed, and Peggy, who continues to advise us and advise them, is very involved in that process as well. We've also done a documentary on the history of the site that should be ready shortly, about 15 minutes long, that will also show some of that. And so we are really deferring to the experts on the advisory group and the expert architects who are Black and Indigenous architects who've done this kind of work, or designers, I should say, not really architects, who've done this kind of work and really are approaching it with love and passion and respect and collaboration between the two cultures and two histories, which are very similar, particularly in their spiritual attitudes. In terms of general opposition to the site, we were on a call convened, I think, at the initiative of Congressman Espaillat, who's also our congressman across the river, and been very impressed by what we did there. And on that call, there were some people who raised concerns that there hadn't been, or they weren't familiar with the community engagement that had been going on. They hadn't participated in it, but just because they hadn't participated didn't mean it hadn't happened. And so I think, you know, when people hear the word shelter for the first time, some people's skin goes up. And so there's some people, but as I said, we've had years of engagement. Miguel has led it tenaciously, passionately, met with the principal, met with the teachers, with the parents group and the parent liaison at PS 98. We will continue to do that. So, you know, there are some people who I wouldn't say are opposed, but are concerned. And we're trying to answer those concerns, which is why we're here tonight.
Okay, I'll leave the last just as a comment, but picking up on what Aisha asked about opportunities. I think that's important, opportunities for the community, and I think opportunities for residents of the shelter as well, perhaps especially around what's involved in being responsible for a historical site.
Well, we will definitely, as part of orienting new clients and new staff when they come to the site, is to make people aware of the history. When we did these listening sessions, we did them with staff and with clients because I didn't want to build a building where either people would refuse to work or people would refuse to live. And we've recorded those. We can share those, the powerful messages that came out from staff and clients of the desire, because of the site's history, to connect the past with the present and help people understand what homelessness derives from, help people maybe realize the struggles that people today are going through, was a very powerful message that came from clients and staff who do this work.
Okay, perhaps that's the basis. For an
And
ongoing
if the
conversation.
community board could help facilitate those tours that were suggested or whatever, we would welcome that.
Great.
Miguel's put his email in the chat.
Right. Yeah, because there was a question that said, how can we reach you to visit the BRC shelter? And this is from Good Shepherd Church. Hello, Patricia. So thank you. We have the email in the chat and also the website.
I'll give you mine as well, just because you'll get a faster answer from Miguel than you will from me, but I don't hide, so just to reinforce that point. And Patricia, Sandra Harris, Carol Stevens from Good Shepherd is a member of the advisory group as well. It's really wonderful to get to know her. So I look forward to getting to know you.
Great. Thanks, Richard. And we have Marielle.
Thanks, Emily, and thank you, Muzzy and Miguel, again for joining. Really appreciate the presentation and answering our questions. Building slightly on some of the points that some of the members shared tonight. One, let's certainly touch base, offline to identify, a date and a time, and maybe, as a group or as a committee and kind of members of the public, we can visit. So it sounds like there's interest from multiple people, so we can do that. And then I guess my question is around, you talked a little bit about the community stakeholder or the community advisory board. Would certainly like to hear more about, kind of what, I know you talked slightly about it, but just the terms of reference. So how would you go about selecting, members or identifying community stakeholders to be involved in that? I think it would be really helpful to possibly have, someone maybe from the community board on there, maybe this committee. So, happy to kind of talk offline, but if you can talk just a little bit more about what that would look like. Thank you.
Right. So you're welcome. Thank you for the question. So first on the tours, Jess, we're happy to do as many as it takes. We don't want to have too many because not only can it be disruptive for the program, but if 24 people are marching through together, you're not going to really feel the experience as if you were more a fly on the wall. We want to give you more of a fly on the wall experience. So I would say 5, 6, 7 at most per tour is probably the max, and we'll do as many as it takes to get it done. And like I said, it's 18 to 24 months before we open. In terms of the structure of the advisory group, we generally meet quarterly and see how that goes. Not that much changes quarter to quarter. We have other lines of communication, but for a group to come together on a quarterly basis, we usually do them in the early evening. That tends to be when most people find it accommodating. It doesn't accommodate everybody. We work 24/7. We know not everybody works a Monday, Friday, 9 to 5 life, but most do. So we usually do it on a weekday evening around 6 o'clock. We always make sure that all the local stakeholder institutions, every elected official, community board, obviously the city agency that funds it, the Department of Homeless Services is invited to participate. Usually a member from the precinct comes, because that's often the types of questions people have. So we don't put our head in the sand about that. And what people often find out is that there's not a lot of, right? I don't want to speak and say there is or isn't crime. I want the precinct to say there is or isn't crime, because you're not going to believe me, you're going to believe them, or more likely. And so we want to be as inclusive as we can be. And then, you know, obviously neighbors on the block, we would, in this case, obviously invite representatives from the school, but anybody who wants to come, we don't keep it to institutional. We open it to anyone. And usually, you know, at the beginning, a lot of people come. And then after a while, it settles out of who are the people who are really committed to it. And that's not a judgment. For different people, they find their different things, and that's okay. And so we keep that going. And then we, generally those meetings, we share a little of what's been happening. But usually it's about listening and hearing what questions people have that are on their mind and being, you know, responsive.
Thank you, Muzzy.
You're welcome. Good to see you.
And I did have a question, just to clarify. You said it's for single men?
Single men, yes.
Okay. Yeah, that was my only question. Other people asked my question. And I don't know if Richard, that's a hand from before, or. Okay. Okay, hand from before. Tanisha, and then I think we should move on.
Great, thank you, Emily. Muzzy, so again, great information and presentation, but I really always try to be very transparent. And when I hear you talking about enslavement and a space that, you know, comes out of that. My question is, what is the makeup of your team? What is the ethnicity? Because while I appreciate your points, I come from lived experience, and I am a Black woman, and a lot of times we have white people speak for us, but they could never understand what it is like being Black and trying to secure housing and having all of this racial discrimination stemming from enslavement and these places. So it would be great for me if I knew that you had Black representation, indigenous representation in this, making the helping to make the decisions and, centering the people that this happens to. So that is very important to me. So I will, I look forward to your answer, and I look forward to also seeing what it looks like.
Absolutely. Great question, Tanisha. Appreciate it. So normally when we do these presentations, I'm joined by BRC's Chief Real Estate Development Officer. The chiefs are the people who report to me. That's Nicole Clare, a Black woman who runs all our real estate, housing development, shelter development. She's on a train back from Philadelphia at the Corporation for Supportive Housing National Conference, so she couldn't be with us tonight, but you will meet her. We are majority Black and majority female run organization. I am neither, for those who may not have camera on. So you're absolutely right. And Nicole is just one of many. Our Chief Financial Officer, Leah Calvez, a Latina, Miguel Guadalupe, who handles both fundraising and community affairs, Vice President, Latin man, also can I talk about what your other involvement is, Miguel? Right, who chairs the Puerto Rican Day Parade coming up, so he's pretty busy right now. And happy to share all that, but you're absolutely right. The lived experience is what it's all about. It's why I hired Peggy, a Black woman, who led the effort to create the African burial ground, because I knew that I was not the person who would know what questions to ask, yet alone to come up with the answers. And so I've delegated this all, except that I feel it's really important that you know me, that in the end, I am the president of the organization and you should know me. So Peggy was involved when we did the listening sessions. Laverna Fountain, a Black woman now living in Pennsylvania, was very involved in all the community engagement when Columbia University was dealing with community concerns as they built the Manhattanville campus. Laverna didn't work for Columbia. She wasn't a Columbia employee, but she facilitated all the listening sessions so that Columbia would hear what the community had to say. And she facilitated all our listening sessions, and she's been very active and involved in this process. And so very committed to that. Our vice president for our shelter division, Derek Watson, also Black man, a lot of Black men. This is going to be predominantly Black men living at this shelter. I couldn't agree with you more. And I greatly value that input and the commitments and the sacrifices that people have had to endure, and the great work that they do here at BRC. And I couldn't be prouder of them and the work they do and how we have grown and learned and how I've grown and learned from this experience working with them. So thank you for asking.
Great. And just going back, because I did have this question in my head, I didn't know how to formulate it, but when you said that it was only single men,
Yeah.
I don't know if because there's high eviction rates, probably a lot of families that need this service, and there's also alarming rates of children being in shelters or needing this service. So I don't know if you're planning on expanding or why you chose specifically single men.
Sure. We are building a family shelter in Long Island City, but on a much bigger site, about half to 2/3 a city block. This site, it doesn't even go from 212 to 211. It goes from 212 to mid block. It was what was the auto body shop. It wasn't going to be viable for anything else that we could fit on that site. Given what the building code requirements are and what the shelter regulations are about how you build a family shelter. And so it worked for this. It's part of what we do. It's not the only thing that we do. But for this site, it was the right fit for that site to be able to make it work.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
And I think, Richard, is that a hand from before, or because right after you, we're going to move on.
Hopefully I can help us move on, as I would like to move a resolution of support for this project.
Yeah, for sure. Marielle, do you know the language of what I'm supposed to say with when?
Yeah, I can come in. Thanks, Emily. So there is a motion on the floor for a resolution to support the shelter that's being built in our community. Is there a second?
I seconded it already.
Okay, great. Thank you, Bruce. Any abstentions? I guess we'll do it that way first. Okay, hearing none. Any objections? Okay, so
Sorry,
the motion passed. Is that an abstention or an
I'm
objection?
just a little
Michelle?
confused on what we're voting on right now, because there's no physical copy. So I just want to kind of better understand what we're voting on.
Sure. So I know some committees, and I can talk to this, and then I'll let Richard maybe speak to the motion. I know some committees usually don't draft the actual resolution in the meeting just because it takes a really long time, and it's actually done afterwards, and then obviously voted on at the general meeting. But the motion, and Richard, please correct me if I'm wrong, is for us as the Housing and Human Services Committee to put forward a resolution with language that supports BRC's single men shelter that will be built in our community. Richard, please clarify or correct me if I've missed anything.
And I'm also following some questions in chat, questions from before. I'm comfortable adding to the resolution based on the information provided at this meeting, and between now and the general meeting, there may be additional input, and we would act responsibly with that and share that with the general membership. But based on the information provided tonight, at least for me, that's sufficient to move resolution of support. But keep the qualifier in there.
Thanks, Richard. Michelle, does that help?
Yeah, I
Kind
would
of
like to
clarify
abstain.
your stand. You'd like to abstain? Okay.
Yeah.
So we have gonna demonstrate one abstention. Any objections? Bruce?
No, I thought you were going to say support. I support it.
Okay, and all in,
It's a conditional resolution, but based
Correct.
on the fact that they were here a year ago and we liked them,
Mhm.
and now we like them even more, in my opinion, I support Richard's resolution. Thank you.
great. All those in support, since we've had one abstention, I do have to say who's in favor. Bruce, you said aye. Emily?
Aye.
Yes. Aye, okay. Marshall?
And also from the prior meeting, it seems that there is a continued arc of reason why I should be supporting this. Thank you.
Okay. I'm not sure how it works, Tanisha, since you're fine kind of sorting out if you want to join the committee or not, but I think we can still capture your vote as a CB12 board member. So how do you vote, Tanisha? Tanisha may be engaged in meeting. Okay. I vote yes. Okay, Tanisha with us?
You cut out
I
a
don't
little
think
bit,
so.
Marielle. Let's see. Tanisha,
Ooh,
I know that
okay.
you were a little bit busy. Can you hear us? Yeah, she did say that she was a little busy. So, Marielle, I mean, yeah, we could hear you, Marielle. It just cut out a little bit.
So
I think we can offer the
Will you hear me
courtesy
now?
when she returns to the meeting.
okay, so lean on the
Sorry,
Well-
Marielle.
ooh,
Yeah, I
is
think it's cut out a
my-
little bit more now.
I'll text you, Emily. It's just so Richards, if you left the resolution passed.
Okay. Yeah, we heard you there, Marielle.
Thank you all very much. Really appreciate it.
Great. Okay.
Really, may I make a brief comment here?
Yeah, go ahead. I don't know if you see the comments also in the chat. I don't know.
I've seen some of them, and some of what I'm saying is in response to that. I think there were some very thoughtful questions about the needs of shelter, to be able to place more women, more families in shelters. I think that would be a very good, and there are shelter providers who specialize in that. I think it'd be a very good program for the fall when we reconvene to ask someone from WIN or one of the other substantial shelter providers to provide us some information on the needs for women and families for sheltered housing, and what some of the plans are and what we might be able to advocate on better. I think that would be one of the good outcomes from some of the concerns that were put out tonight.
Thanks, Richard, for clarifying. Yeah, I was just reading the comments now. I know that there's a member who was asking about like the procedure. But for now, consider it, positive vote from us. And we do need to move on. I know that we are supposed to get a presentation from Palante next, but I don't see Elsia here. So we'll move on to Jaren from We Act for Environmental Justice.
We're going to go. Thank you very much. Stay well, and we look forward to talking and seeing you again.
Thanks so much, Muzzy and Miguel, for coming by. Thanks. All right, so let's move on to Jaren. And Jaren, you have the floor now.
Great, thank you. And thank you for having me. For the sake of time, I know you'll have a lot to cover tonight. I'll try to keep my comments brief, but again, my name is Jaren Burke. I'm the Environmental Health Manager at We Act for Environmental Justice. And my role is overseeing a lot of our air quality work and also our Healthy Homes Working Group, which is what I'm here to talk about today. So the Healthy Homes Working Group is a section of our advocacy that focuses on environmental health factors that impact people in their homes. So things like lead, mold, pests, and indoor air quality from gas appliances. So we've done some work over the last couple of years, looking especially at the contributions of gas appliances, especially gas stoves, on indoor air quality, and had a report that came out late last year that looked at the increased NO2 levels from gas stoves and advocating for faster swap out for people that have gas stoves to induction stoves. And you can look at that report. I can share a link in the chat after this to take a closer look at that. You can also find it on our website, weact.org/out-of-gas. And the focus of the working group is to continue to do advocacy around all those different factors that are impacting people in their home. We've been working for a long time to end childhood lead poisoning. And in New York State, it's unfortunately still an issue. We're actually the state with the highest rate of childhood lead poisoning, which is not something that New York wants to be leading in. And so we have some policies that we've been pushing forward to help bring that number down to zero. It's closer to the 2,000 children that are annually poisoned by lead from lead paint and other sources. So those are some examples of different things that we work on. And most of the work that we do as an organization is focused around policy at the city, state, and federal level, and trying to get folks in the community involved in helping to shape that policy and help to advocate for things that are impacting them in their homes. So something that we recently did a presentation about was around the indoor allergens like pests and mold, and local law 55 that is supposed to require landlords to address those things in their homes, but there's still lots of folks who are burdened with that, and thinking about ways that we can encourage the city to have better enforcement around those policies and make sure that people are protected. So those are just some examples of things that we're working on. It's still a very young group. We used to be a part of the NYCHA Healthy Homes Working Group, which was focused specifically on these issues in NYCHA developments. But as of the beginning of this year, we've been looking at other types of housing. We still have a NYCHA working group that looks at some of the specific challenges in NYCHA developments. But now this working group is looking at all of the healthy homes factors in all types of housing. So we're really just here to share that information. I'm going to include a link. I'll drop it here in the chat in just a second to learn more about the working group. We have a meeting coming up on June 6th, and the focus of that is actually in response to some information that we heard from the Attorney General's office about illegal pesticide use in Washington Heights and Inwood, and those products being sold for folks to deal with pests in their home. But there's lots of folks who have been exposed to those chemicals from either using them themselves or their super or landlord using them to deal with pests, and then being exposed and then having poisonings that are reported as a result of that. So we're doing this meeting on June 6th to talk about that as an issue, and hopefully get some input from community members about how to best message that so that folks can learn ways to deal with pests in their home and reduce that exposure to allergens as a result, but also not be poisoned from these chemicals that are used to deal with rodents and pests. So I'll leave it at that, and I will start dropping some things in the chat in terms of links and open it up to any questions that folks have if you want to learn more.
Great. Thank you, Jaren. We do have a question in the chat. And if anyone has any questions, any of the members, please raise your hand or write in the chat as Bruce did. So Bruce says, I'm so sorry because my vision at this time, because I'm on the computer all day, I can't really see. How do you account for additional electrical power for an induction stove, for example, 220 V?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is an ongoing challenge with buildings trying to swap out the stoves. The building that we worked with as part of the pilot study was a NYCHA development, and they had to go through and have the wiring upgraded in the walls to account for that extra power that's needed for those stoves. And that's something that I think a lot of development, a lot of homes and apartments are dealing with, that potential extra cost. And something that we're advocating for as one of the bills at the state level is for when these repairs are being done, these upgrades are being done, there's also issues around mold and pests that can be addressed at the same time. Basically, those are barriers often for making some of these upgrades. So I think that that bill would hopefully try to remedy some of that by doing it all at one. But the other thing that a lot of folks have been looking at in terms of dealing with this issue, in terms of the voltage difference, is there are actually some stoves that have been coming out that are have an internal battery that basically allows it to plug in directly with the existing voltage in the wall. So there's still questions to be seen about how expensive those will be and whether or not those will be the best option. But this is still like an ongoing discussion. But regardless, there's still this clear demonstrated impact from gas stoves on indoor air quality, which is definitely linked to an increased burden for people living with asthma. So there is a need to think about ways to start to transition towards these electric stoves, both for the health impacts, but also for buildings to meet their requirements under Local Law 97 and switching to electric appliances in general. So I think it's a transition that's happening, but there's not a perfect answer to your question exactly how that issue of the voltage is going to be resolved.
Thank you.
Hopefully, yeah.
Thanks. And Michelle?
Hi, Jaren. I was wondering if you could speak more about these pesticides that you're finding folks are using for rats or other pests that are poisoning people, and how we can learn more about that and identify those.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am less of an expert on the specific products. That's why we're partnering with the Attorney General's office to do this presentation on the 6th. But I have some information I can pull up. I think I have it with me here to share with you. Give me just a second and I can pull it up. But one of the common pesticides, it's referred to as a sniper. You may have heard of that. It's a very intense name, but it's a common one that a lot of people have reported using or being exposed to. Yeah, if you give me just a second, I can pull up a couple of those other ones. There's about 4 or 5 that are really well known, that have been primarily used in Washington Heights and Inwood. But I recommend if you have time, you can join us on June 6th. You'll learn more about them and think about ways to maybe have alternative strategies for getting rid of pests, and maybe have some input about how to brand and share that messaging.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Any other questions? Okay, I do have a question in regards to the gas stoves and the transition. Have you found like that people are still questioning or challenging or doubting it, and like how Yeah, because I know that some of the concerns, for example, is like, what's going to happen if there's like a power outage, and it being that it's electrical, that means we won't get to use the gas stove, like the stove versus a gas stove, which you can.
Yeah, that's that's definitely something that we've heard from folks as a real concern. I think something that we've also been thinking about is the very real fact that so many people have gas outages constantly, especially for folks living in NYCHA. They're no strangers to that, and how, having a gas stove does not guarantee you reliable access to having your stove either. So there's challenges in both ways, and I think that there is, especially with the potential for some of those battery operated gas stoves where they can store some of that electricity, you actually would have more reliability with that. The other thing I will say is that in this pilot project that we did, where folks had their gas stove swapped out for an induction stove, at the very end, we gave everyone the opportunity to switch back to their gas stove if they wanted to. Again, this were people who participated in the study, and they had the right to go back to their gas stove if they wanted to, knowing the risks, like the health exposure. And all of them decided that not only for the health component that they wanted to keep their induction stove, but also they all reported liking it better. They liked the interface. They thought it was easier to use. They felt safer, especially for folks who were worried about gas leaks and those who had small children. So there's lots of different factors that people expressed preferring with the induction stove over the gas stove. But to your point, there are still some challenges about what happens in a power outage, and I think that's still something that will need to be figured out, but doesn't necessarily only exist for induction stoves over gas stoves.
Great, thanks. And let's see, anyone have any other questions for Jaren? I know WEACT, I also did have a question in regards to, like, I don't know if you have any members coming to you in regards to like issues with landlords and maintenance of buildings and living in like older buildings or newer buildings and evictions, but if you provide resources for that.
That's something that we're working on. Again, prior to this year, the group was focused on NYCHA, so the landscape of the group was a little bit different, and the challenges related to that were different. Now that's something we're in the process of trying to figure out, because we have had people who have come to us and had those questions, but we haven't had people to point them to just yet. But we're trying to sort those things out. So hopefully, the next time that we come to present for this group will have some more information about that. But if you have any recommendations in the meantime, again, that we're always looking for folks to be able to refer people to, because we know that is a need for folks in the short term and the immediate that people are dealing with. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Now that we hear a lot about like evictions or conditions of buildings and distressed buildings, I know that that's an issue that's constantly coming up in our past meetings as well. So that's definitely something that we could collaborate on in case you need more resources, but that's something that could also help like local residents. So thank you so much, Jaren, for presenting. Again, WEACT for Environmental Justice. We'll have all of the information that he's provided in the chat in our minutes, which is out to the public as per you, like always, right? So everyone will have access to this. Thank you so much, Jaren, for coming today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. And I'll also leave my email in the chat in case anyone wants to reach out, has questions about the working group or about WEACT in general. We're always here as a resource. And thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So we'll move on. And Marielle, I'm not sure if Elsia is not coming at all, or we should just keep moving forward. Okay. So Elsia won't come from Palante, hopefully in our next meeting. So we'll move on to the discussion on housing Manhattanites with the Land Use Committee. Not sure if you wanted to say something specifically in regards to this, Marielle?
Sure, I'm gonna turn off my video just because I continue to have kind of connectivity issues, unfortunately. Thank you, Emily. As always. I mean, just really briefly, so we haven't had much motion on the initiative. And so I think part of it is just because it's been really busy with a lot of other things happening. And I think it was at the can't recall if it was at the general meeting or the executive meeting. There was feedback, I think, from Steve Simon on rather than it being a walk. So maybe I'll step back. So as some of you may recall, we are partnering with the land use committee to help identify empty lots and review spots within the community to build affordable housing as part of the Manhattan Borough President's plan on housing Manhattanites. And we identified kind of a plan to kind of host these walking tours, so to speak, and partner with some of the other committees and some of that. And thanks, Emily, for dropping a link in the chat. We haven't had much movement. There was a little bit of a suggestion from Steve to have it actually be on buses. So, and I don't know how, we can do that, or, it's just kind of, running on the different buses around the community, but pretty much more to come. Obviously, probably at this point won't happen in June because it's quite quick. That's the timeline that we had initially identified. So it actually might, move into July at this point, or, sometime over the summer. But again, the ask is still out there. If anyone's interested in getting involved, let me know. And we hope to kind of pick up on some of that work. Thanks, Emily.
Yeah, of course. And I know that land use was also discussing how, so for example, I can show just a little glimpse of the document, how they separated on sites that they found in different districts. So I think they were talking about in land use how there's also properties that are just not on here that should be considered as a lot or as a site to use for housing that's actually affordable. And there's definitely, I would say, I feel like there's a lot of details that aren't in here. This is kind of like a draft of what they plan on doing. So that's why I really suggest that everyone takes a look at this document so that you can come with more questions to the Manhattan Borough President office in regards to how they're going to go about this, so that we don't just have a bunch of new buildings that aren't really affordable again, or any other concern that you may have, just because I did sort of skim through parts of it, and I have seen buildings that are just not listed here. So if you do know of like lots, buildings, sites that could potentially be added on here, I suggest that you let us know. We could bring it to the office or to the discussion that we're going to have with Manhattan Borough President Office and land use, and it could just be something additional. So yeah, and if nobody has any comments, questions on this topic, we'll move on, and I'll be forwarding the link again to everyone via email, just so that everyone takes a look at it. The next item we have on our agenda is the monthly updates from elected representatives on housing and human services. Marielle, I'm not too sure if you had like a plan on this one, or if there was going to be anyone today speaking.
Thanks, Emily. No one is dropping in today, but hopefully they will join us at the next meeting. I know something that we kind of talked a little bit about last month with Kiana from Councilmember De La Rosa's on the vacancy rates across city agencies. So I anticipate that they may be able to provide us with an update on some of that in the near future. But for right now, no, I don't think we have anything on this item.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, and we have been sort of monitoring this, me, Marielle, and we were discussing with Aisha as well about the vacancy rates and having like, I know that I've been seeing these government hiring balls or halls, is that what they call it? Government hiring halls. But a lot of the positions that we thought would be on there aren't on there. So we are closely looking into this, being that they're really over capacity in a lot of agencies, as was mentioned in the last meeting. All right, so yeah, moving on. And the next item is old business. So not sure if there's anything you had in mind or if anyone wants to speak about old business.
Yes, Emily, I have one item under old business, if I may. So, as you all know, at the general meeting in May, I presented a resolution, on the kind of the intersectionalities of the different crises across New York City, and kind of kind of how the killing of Jordan Neely has exacerbated, but also kind of really shown a spotlight, because obviously a lot of these things unfortunately were happening even before, but it has really kind of shown a spotlight of all of these issues. I received some friendly amendments, as you all know, from the hold on, I'm just looking at the chat. I received some friendly amendments from committee members at that meeting. I have yet to incorporate some of them because I just haven't had a chance to, but I wanted to kind of just give the committee some space. There was a suggestion for the committee here to reflect on it, and I just wanted to see if there were any other points that you all as a committee would like to see incorporated into that resolution. And then I would like to then kind of after the discussion call on a vote for that. But I'll turn it over to you, Emily, kind of moderate for maybe 5 minutes if there's any additional feedback to what was already shared at the meeting in May. So just kind of to recap what some of the points were. There was a point about adding that Jordan Neely was a former resident of Washington Heights and Inwood. That was a friendly amendment. Tanisha, you spoke about, bringing in some language reflecting that Jordan Neely grew up in foster care and how that system failed him, but also can kind of bring it to that wider point of how it's the cycle and failing a lot of Black and brown children. There was amendments around or suggestions of amendments around looking at mental health, kind of bringing in that broader aspect. And there was an additional I think an overall point from several colleagues around making it just a bit more specific and tying it to kind of legislation and things of that nature. So just to refresh your memories. Thanks.
Great. I don't know if you want me to reflect it on the screen, if people have to review it, or
if you could, Emily, but I would suggest we probably don't spend too much time on it. If that's okay. But yes, if you could, thank you. And sorry, I'm not in a position to share my screen just yet.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. I think this is the most updated one.
Yes, exactly. So I haven't made any of the changes that I just mentioned, but those are the ones that were shared, if you all recall, at the meeting.
I do recall that one of our community board members said that the issue is a lot more deep rooted and complex, and that we have to add like more. So I'm not sure if that member sent you things on that, and she said a lot, so that's why I didn't catch most of that stuff. But is that stuff being added?
So I did ask all members to send me the information that they wanted to see reflected in the resolution, and no one sent me anything. So yeah, I need to kind of go back to the recording, but again, it would be really helpful in addition to what was shared there, if that if any of you all in particular, I think the bit around specific legislation and that we can kind of this too, so it's a bit more specific, which was a concern that board members brought up.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, I know that it's a very deep-rooted issue and that it's very complex, but it definitely helps out if they just put their 2 cents into like what they want this to look like. So hopefully when people do, maybe I could send out an email to the board to see if they have any comments, or if that member could send us a few sentences, whereases, to see if this could be more complete like they desired it.
Thanks, Emily. And I see in the chat that Bruce would like to post comments. And just really quickly on Aisha. So as you know, I mean, you're welcome to kind of share any comments you have. It's being reflected on the screen. Happy for you to kind of put some thoughts in the chat that we can take into consideration as we make those edits and strengthen the draft resolution. So maybe, because I'm not seeing any hands, Emily, and just being kind of cognizant of time. If it's okay, can I suggest that I'll recirculate this? And then if people can please provide feedback, as I've asked, that's just helpful. It just makes it a little bit easier to be able to put that forward. And then,
Sure.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, Michelle asked if I could read the resolved. Community Board 12 Manhattan calls upon City Council to pass legislation including a budget that is people-centered and responds to the urgent need to address the interest that, sorry, I cannot see at this time. The interrelated housing, mental health, economic, and public safety crises impacting New Yorkers every day. Right, so definitely look at the resolution, y'all. And I know that there's a lot, like once everything, you know, gets voted on, or people meticulously look at it at the last minute and then they're like, no, wait, we could add like this, and because it should be more specific, and it, you know, we didn't even mention XYZ. Like, we don't want it to reach, you know, this is a really big issue, but we also want you guys to like take a look at this, think about it, think about whatever additional comments you want to put on it, because we do want it to be whole and complete and to actually pass the vote for the next meeting, right? And we do have the summer, so
Well, thanks, Emily. Just really quickly, if I can. Yes,
Yeah.
please do share your comments, everyone. So the next meeting won't be until the fall, because we then have the summer break. So, and again, there's a bit about timeliness, and a lot of the comments that were shared, I think, are friendly and can certainly be incorporated into all of this. Can I recommend, being that one colleagues have seen this, because it was presented at the May meeting and it was tabled. Can I put a motion for this committee to vote on it with the amendments or the friendly amendments that were given at the May meeting? And then it could then go to the general meeting for full, kind of for full vote with those comments that colleagues will share and add.
I'd like to see the proposed amendments and then vote on it, okay?
So the proposed amendments are the ones that I just spoke about. Those are the ones that were already shared publicly at the May meeting. I just haven't had a chance to actually run them. And so that's why I've also asked for, so the bit around adding that he's a former resident. He was a former resident, excuse me. A former foster care child, kind of the impact of that system.
Marielle,
members?
I'm sorry. I agree with Michelle. I think the resolution is a little vague and it's very broad scope. And I'd like to see it tailored a little bit, which I think we need to work on it some more. Thank you.
All right, so not sure if Marielle, we could like circulate the Google Doc, make the amendments along the way, and then it would have to be for the next meeting.
So
That
what
way-
I can do, again, really helpful if colleagues can please actually feedback. And then certainly recognize your points. Your points are valid, both Bruce and Michelle. I think there's also a bit around time proofing this, so to speak, because these are really big issues. And so I don't think they're necessarily tied to one particular thing. I think it's, really broad, and just really thinking about how can we have more people-centered policy and people-centered budgets. And so that's why I proposed it that way, but I recognize there's also I guess, an opportunity to be a bit more specific and honed in. And so that's a certainly recognizable thought. So what I will do then, I'll send the draft to everyone. Please share your comments. And I will present it at the exec for the executive committee to vote, and then for it to go to general. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, so I'll just reiterate. I know everyone's busy. I'm busy as well. So I will definitely take a look at this, and I guess we could just put our comments in like red or in another color, right, Marielle? And like,
Yep, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yep, exactly. I'll
yeah,
send
so
it
we're
now.
gonna, so we're gonna circulate it, make your comments, make your amendments, like add whatever you need to add, and then we'll present it in the executive meeting and see how it goes by over there. And we'll try sending it to the board members who are also curious about adding certain things as well, or the whole board. Yeah. Great. Any comments?
Yeah, I have a comment.
Yes.
So I just find it a little bit taxing. People are saying that the issues are complicated and it's big, but what we know is that homelessness, mental health, and all of these things that beat down Black individuals, such as Jordan Neely, such as George Floyd, happens daily. So as a Black woman, it's not complicated for me. So I just want to put it on record that I would like to have voted on this tonight, and I would like to have it ready for the next board meeting instead of wait until September. These are the things that constantly happen in our community. We keep waiting and waiting and waiting until we get the language right, while Black people are consistently dying. So this is an urgent issue to me. Thank you for writing this resolution. I'm sad that I just came on board, but I appreciate y'all and I fully support this resolution. And I don't see a reason not to vote on it and bring it to the committee. If we know what the friendly amendments is going to be, if we have already agreed to those, if you had suggestions, I'm confused on why Marielle has not gotten them since the board meeting. So it's a little confusing what's going on here. But again, I just wanted to have on record that I was ready to vote on this tonight, and I was ready, I'm ready for this to be a resolution before we go on break. While, who knows how many countless people will die this summer and we have nothing on record. I yield back.
Thanks, Tanisha. Yeah, so that's just an emphasis. Please, everyone take a look at the document. We understand this is a very pressing issue. This is why we're all members here, so that we can make a difference. We understand that this is an issue, and we also want to, put that language that we need in there so that we could pass this resolution over to the executive meeting and just do all the hierarchical stuff and then actually get it to be a resolution that works. So I do understand everyone's, you know, like, not, you know, hesitance, because we want this to be like a good resolution that afterward could work. So, and that's one of the issues that I've seen since I've joined, where there's resolutions that have been passed but not followed up on. So yeah, just make sure that you add that language that is needed so that we could follow up on it after it passes and that it actually makes an impact in our community. Okay, any other comments, questions, concerns? All right, let me see the comments here. Okay. Marielle, yes.
Yeah, just sent the document for colleagues to view. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, Marielle, and I do have a question because I know that with everything in the bylaws and all that, if people make additions or amendments, we could still present, like, is there some kind of thing where it's like, first we have to do it here, then move to the exec and then general? It's fine if people like take a look and then make amendments and bring it to exec?
To my knowledge, and this is me not being a parliamentarian, to my knowledge, as long as it's verbally stated, so, you know, I've stated kind of the amendments, or at least the ones that were shared at the May meeting, and those comments are captured here, then it's fine, because obviously the resolution will still need to be voted on at the general meeting anyway. That's my understanding.
Okay. All right, yeah, because I saw a comment in the chat, that's why I brought that up. Okay. Yeah, so we'll follow the procedures, and okay. So I know that Aisha, you wanted to speak something on old business. So not sure, Chanel, if you could, I don't know what the term is, to bring someone to like speak, or Marielle, do you know?
Yeah, no, I can do it because Chanel's no longer online.
Okay.
So just give me 1 second. Hold on. Okay. Just really quickly, if I can, Emily. Michelle asked, why did this go through exec instead of committee? So Michelle, for context, the reason why this went to exec instead of the May meeting is because the killing happened like a day before, I think it was, the housing meeting. And because there's so many intersectionalities. And so that's why I raised it at the executive meeting. I presented it at the executive meeting in May to be voted on there. And then some people kind of provided feedback, and then it was again delayed in at the May general meeting because of, again, all of the intersectionalities with health, public safety, so on. And we have, and I know other board members have done, the executive committee can put forward resolutions as well. Just wanted to answer that. So you have that there. Okay, Aisha, let me give you, let's see. Are you able to speak, Aisha? I think I did. Okay.
Hi. So,
Hi.
good evening, everyone. This is my first time in 10 years speaking in this Housing and Human Services meeting as a non-member. First, before I begin about old business, I just want to say this is my first experience being on this side of how things work. And I've heard from community members their concerns. I've heard from community members that don't participate anymore, that the Zoom doesn't function for them. And I get it now. Even though I have advocated and I've spoken up about things that I thought should have been implemented to make it more inclusive for our community members, I still didn't have a full understanding of what the experience is like. Whereas the committee may be talking about certain things and speakers are here present, presenting information, but by the time you catch it, you put your thoughts together and you type it into the chat, the committee has moved on. And it's not an equitable experience to what it was pre-pandemic, and it's not even an attempt to it, because pre-pandemic, we sat in the room with the community members and were able to hear them speak, but also know who was in the room. I've seen people consistently put in the chat how we don't even know who else is here. So I just want to put on record here now that I do not think that this respects open meetings law, and we should do something about that. That being said, at the general meeting, a couple of people spoke. I also spoke. This is the 2-year anniversary since this committee put forth a resolution in regards to the Fort Washington Armory. 2 years have passed. And as Phil Zablocki spoke in the general meeting, 4 of the directives in that resolution, nothing has been done. And that doesn't only fall on this committee. There is work that this committee was responsible for doing. Some of that is in relation to the public hearing, but the other things in that resolution certainly fall on the laps of our elected officials, agencies, etc. And as Phil Zablocki asks, what is happening to that? And where is the advocacy around that? And by the way, I've seen recently flyers go out where groups in the community have been given access to space, when in this meeting it has been said that there would be a RFP process implemented for the spaces in the building, but seemingly there's still a backdoor process where people can just get space despite no such RFP process being implemented, which in my opinion goes against the spirit of the contract that governs that building, which I put a team together to foil. And here I am, a non-board member. You wonder why. That being said, it's of concern to me that it would take 2 years. And I know that some of the work that we were looking to do was obviously structure a respectful forum that allows inclusivity and brings together the stakeholders and any expert in that regard. It's some of what I've advocated for as a board member. And I respect both Emily and Marielle, the work that they've done. I'm grateful that they are the 2 people that have stepped in during this time. But we need to finalize this process of what's going on with this Fort Washington Armory. So that's my old business. I will wait until we get to new business. Thank you.
Maria, do you want to say something? And then I want to say something too.
Sure, can do. Good job. Yes, I remember when I first joined the committee a few years ago. I mean, not that long ago, but still it feels a while ago. This being one of the things that the committee, and obviously the issue dates back even much longer, predates much longer than when I joined. We are meant, and this is something that we're working on, to follow up with the Armory Foundation colleagues, to have a meeting to kind of discuss what the forum would look like. That's in the works. It has not been confirmed, and it's on our necessary. From there, they have been responsive, and their point is to follow up with DHS. Yeah, so that's where we are right now. One second, Aisha. Oops, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Sorry. I thought you had stopped.
No. where we're at right now. In regards to the electeds, as I've shared before in some of the other meetings, when we've had meetings with them, we have kind of raised and said, listen, this is something that we're looking to do. We've sent them the resolution. They said they're interested, and it's one of those things that we just kind of need to wait and see, unfortunately. But we are certainly doing our best to kind of keep following up on it. Emily?
Yeah, so I wanted to say something similar as well. I understand that first talking about the issue of Zoom, it's really unfortunate that that's what's happening, like on the end, like now that Aisha is on that end, and she told me that there's 2 different passcodes to get in. So I know that, Housing and Human Services is a really big issue. And if we don't have the public here, that's not, this is basically what we're here for. So hopefully we could find something out. I don't know if it's like a Zoom issue, if it's the type of Zoom format that we use, but we'll look into that. It shouldn't be that difficult just to have like the public join. And then for Armory, it's just been really hard to like coordinate to get everyone to be part of this forum. As you guys know, in the past, you've tried to reach out to agencies and it hasn't worked out, and we're still going through the same process. So hopefully we do get in contact with the people that we need to be in this forum and make it the format that it needs to be, so that it could be, like a constructive conversation that actually leads to something where, I want us to actually envision like what it is that we want the Armory to be in the end, where, like what's our end goal? Do we want, the community organizations that are local to also take part in activities there, like as often as they want, to have some kind of a coordinator that like, could be like, oh, the space is open, and, first dibs on community organizations that are local, and etc. Like we need to have some kind of a vision, right? So we're still planning on that, and it's been kind of hard. So if anyone wants to be on board to like help us plan this, that would be great. Just because Marielle and I, we're busy as well, but at the same time, we are trying our best. Tanisha, do you have a comment?
Yes, I have several. So first of all, I want to agree with Aisha on how the Zoom meetings are run for meetings. It is very horrible. It is not inclusive. The only people that you see are the people talking that are from the community board. Is not inclusive. I go to a lot of other meetings like Community 10, and it's an open meeting. Emily, it is definitely set that way. My own community-based organization has a Zoom account, and you set it that way. This is a webinar. This is not an inclusive regular Zoom where everyone gets on and you can see the other members, you can see who's there, who's not there. The only people you can see when you are not a community board member is the panelists. You cannot see anything else. And if these are public meetings, which they are supposed to be, then it's not public to the public, and we need to talk about that ASAP. Because if the public cannot, like Aisha said, if the public cannot fully participate, if we cannot see them and they cannot see us, we are not here to sit above anyone. We are here to be part of the community. So we need to sit in the community and make sure that we can see faces and names, and other community members know who's here as well. That is unacceptable to me. I felt some type of way when I was just part of the community and I didn't get to see everyone who was there as well. And it makes the community not want to participate. Is that what we want? We want the community to participate in the community board because it is their voices and it is their concerns that we are supposed to be here fighting for and raising. if I'm not mistaken. As far as the armory, I again agree with Aisha. As a community organizer, I never even thought of going to the armory and trying to get some community space for all of the community events that we do in the armory, because I know that I am not wanted there. So the armory should be open to community-based organizations, to people in the community trying to do stuff for the community. We don't have a lot of spaces in our community that the community can use without having to pay a crazy amount of money. We need to talk about how do we get community spaces in our community that are accessible to the community, and start with the armory. I yield back.
Thanks, Tanisha. We'll definitely bring the Zoom issue back to the general board, because I know it's been a topic that's been brought up several times about how it feels like very, what's the term, like where everyone's like in silos, but nobody's like in one big meeting as it should feel. So I'll bring that to the general board, because I know that we're still doing these hybrid meetings. And yeah, thank you for the comments on the armory. That's definitely what we're trying to do in the end with that. Aisha?
Yeah, what I forgot to say was we spoke about this previously. A request for a full tour of the Armory building has been in effect probably for about 5 years now, which goes back to when I was chair of the Housing and Human Services Committee. The reason why that is necessary is because when we were giving a tour previously, we were ushered along the path of what they wanted us to see and not the full building, so that we, the community and the community board, could have a full understanding of the capacity of that building and how it can be better serving us, how it's serving the community now, right? But more importantly, what the contract says and what is allowed to happen there, which certainly is not the case for a while now. So that tour should not come through the Armory Foundation, because according to the contract, they are not the stewards of that building. The Department of Homeless Services is, and that is where the request should be made, and that is where it should be honored, and it shouldn't have taken 5 years.
Okay, yeah, so we'll definitely go in that order, like maybe do the tour and plan the hearing, or work on both of those. But I'll speak to Marielle about this, and if anyone wants to be included in this conversation and in the planning, please let us know. And the last hand will be Richard, just so that we could move on to new business. Richard?
Very briefly, the suggestion on how our Zoom meetings are structured or aren't structured. Good suggestions, essentially a technical problem to be solved. And from attending other meetings, I think it's a pretty easy technical. To me, that means staff has got to be part of this. I'd suggest you take it to the executive committee, because that's where staff supervision comes closer to coming from that meeting than any other meeting. I think that's got the best potential for fast resolution on a good idea.
Yeah, we'll do. I'll definitely bring it up in the next executive meeting and see what they say, and offer some plans on that. All right.
I think there's some pretty strong feedback on that from here, and I hope you'll carry the intensity of the feedback as well as the idea.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. Thanks, Richard. So we do have to move on. We'll move on to new business. So I know that Aisha had new business, was there something, Marielle, that you had in new business? Because I didn't have anything on this agenda.
No, I don't think so. I mean, the only thing is, like you mentioned, unfortunately, Palante was unable to join us. So hopefully, we'll kind of follow up, and hopefully Palante will be able to join us at a future meeting. Yeah, I think that's it. I don't think there's anything else at the moment, at least not that I'm remembering.
Alrighty. And Aisha, you did have something for new business, right?
I do. So we've spoken about it briefly. I raised it primarily when we had the joint meeting with Health and Environment. And since then, I actually, just to preface this, I started a small business through which I'm doing medical transport, pharmaceuticals, specimens, etc., for various medical institutions, 2 institutions as well as 2 patients. And just recently, I've been given our district as a part of my territory, right? So what it's done is given me even more access to see the very issue that I had concerns of, that it is definitely in effect in our district, which has to do with doorbells, intercoms, buzzers, fob keys. I am concerned, and this is not just in our district, but outside of our district. There's too many that are dysfunctional. And now looking at it through a medical lens, I'm seeing the potential harm that can come from these things not being remedied in a timely fashion. I tried to dig in to see, and this is another open question for HPD as far as what are the protocols, right? Well, how long does a landlord have when an intercom, buzzer, doorbell, etc., is broken before it has to be fixed? Now, I've seen from the advocacy side that it goes way too long, that even makes any sense, like months before they get a working system or intercom. I've stood with like 6 people trying to enter the building they live in, where they have to wait for someone to exit before they can get into the own building that they live in, right? But I also see a space for where the law might need to be changed. There's a law that basically puts the mark at 1968 for buildings that were built after 1968. They are required to have an intercom, buzzer, etc. And I haven't seen exactly when that was passed, but I'm assuming that whenever it was passed, it may have been based on the economic conditions of that time, the technology that existed for these things at that time. And the technology may be completely different. It may be less expensive. It may be less expensive to fix them. And so I feel like we need to take a look at what that is, because I'm dealing with, and one of the things that Steve Simon said in that meeting was I would need to give him the specific addresses of where that is. Well, first of all, I would be violating HIPAA if I did that. So that's not going to happen. But what I can attempt to do is start documenting when I come across these buildings, the address without indicating the patient's name or what the experience was. But I have come with a person that I felt was having a health crisis at that moment. I'm limited in my capacity to urge the person to do anything other than what they want to do. But the concern that I left there with is, now that I know that this person is in a possible crisis, I'm leaving them again with a door that was hard for me to get into to deliver emergency meds that they needed. What about if they call the ambulance and they can't get in, right? And I've spoken to people throughout these different buildings when I've seen it and learned it's been going on for months. The landlord is not doing how hard it is for, some of the intercom, sometimes it's not even that the intercom is broken, but that the way that it works is whoever the tenant is gets access through their cell phone, and that's how they buzz people in. So now if that tenant is not home and they have left people in the household, that person doesn't have a way of engaging to buzz anyone in, right? I've also seen where there's no key on the doorway, but you have to use your phone in order to buzz yourself into your own building, which some people have expressed, what if I'm running from, what if I'm in harm's way and I'm just trying to get into my building so I'm in a safe place? It takes you like 3 minutes to get into the building because you got to do this whole technological thing instead of just being.
Right. Or if you have a dead phone, like how would that work?
Exactly. So I feel like there's an opportunity here to tighten up something that is definitely affecting people in a negative way and shouldn't be this way. And it falls in this bracket of housing and human services. So
It does.
I am going to continue to try to get more background. I will send to the chairs the information that I've already gathered, but I definitely am looking towards passing a resolution that gives a smaller window to get
Yeah.
the fixed.
Perhaps also, Aisha, I don't know if, no, this could probably be breaking HIPAA because there's like a lot of technicalities with it, but showing numbers, demonstrating statistics always makes a difference. And if there's any way where like in your company, you're allowed to do anonymous surveys of like, you know, can you use your intercom? Do you have access to, you know, like telephone or emergency or like whatever, you know, like questions, simple little questions that you could answer during your services, or that maybe, you know, you could
That's a
send
great
some other
idea.
way.
That's
Yeah.
definitely a great idea, and I definitely will run that up the chain. And you just reminded me of something else. In one building that is in our district, people had to have a paper list on the doorway with their personal phone numbers so that when anyone comes there, delivery service or otherwise, they can get in the door because the intercom doesn't work. But now you're having to publish your personal phone number to the public. Anybody that walks up to that door now has the telephone numbers of those people that live in that building because it's the only way you can get in the building. So it's just all problematic.
Yeah, so we could do some kind of a standardized method. So I know that we're almost finishing. We're trying to finish like around 9. Marielle, do you have a comment to say?
I do. And yes, just keeping an eye on the time. Thank you, Aisha, for raising that. It just reminds me of a point. I think it was last year. So there was a member of the community who raised the concern around, I believe it was the community member's mother was using a wheelchair at the time. And the fact that the building and the landlord wasn't accessible. And there was an issue with like the ramps. And you know, and those types of things. So certainly something for us to look into and can kind of ask and DOB about. So yeah, thank you, Aisha, for bringing that to our awareness.
Thank you.
So I'll definitely bring this, I'll discuss this with Marielle too. Maybe we could invite Department of Buildings. Do we have to make a resolution? I'm not too sure, but yeah, definitely a very important housing issue. And I think we didn't have anything else on new business. Marielle, is there anything else you'd like to bring up?
Nope, maybe just someone to motion to adjourn the meeting, unless Marshall has a point.
Oh yeah, Marshall?
I wanted to wait till new business to bring this up, and I guess it does touch on the Zoom issue, but what are the plans now as far as either resuming in-person meetings or hybrid meetings on the committee level? I did appear at the general meeting on Zoom, found it very convenient, but as it was a hybrid meeting, and like I say, it's more of a question, and I'll land my plane right here. Thank you.
Marielle, not sure if you have a comment.
Yeah, no, good question, Marshall. I mean, I don't know honestly what the timeline is for committees moving to hybrid. I think part of it is space. I don't know, but certainly a point that we can raise at the exec and ask for a timeline.
Yeah. Is it because you're interested in going in person, Marshall?
Well, no, but see, the advent of the Zoom meeting manifested from the pandemic.
Mhm.
And in some senses, some of the issues that have been raised earlier in this meeting about it's not democratic and all that, you didn't have it because you came to the meeting. And now, I can't say I'm as technically savvy as Aisha, but with these licenses and stuff, and I would imagine that that they're trying to do it on the cheap, so to say. There are so many people that you can have at these meetings without incurring expenses. So if we go back to full flesh and blood meetings, or if we're going to have hybrid meetings, maybe these are things that will help resolve some of the criticism about the meetings and the structures. I find myself, because I guess I get more invitations now that I'm in the webinar. We're not addressing the people who are watching the meetings on YouTube. And I wonder if any of their comments even get to the floor.
Right. Right.
And I don't want to prolong the meeting much longer. It's
No,
9:02.
that's a great
so-
point. That's a great point, because we are live on YouTube, but they technically, whoever's watching could be the public or in our region, but then they can't have a say. They're just watching, but it's just so that it's more widespread. So I understand, definitely. I'll bring that to the floor. Richard, then Michelle. Oh, you're speaking, but we can't hear you. Gotta,
You see my lips moving. Okay.
yeah.
Picking up on Marshall and a number of other comments, I think we have an issue that maybe is more complex than it appears on the surface, because I know over the last 2 years, we've gotten a lot of feedback over people who are participating or at least connecting with these meetings for the first time because it's on Zoom. And in a number of ways, we've had more participation. And in a number of ways, just as said tonight by a number of people, we've had less participation. I got focused just on the technical issue of how can we make the Zoom meetings feel more inclusive than they are right now. I think that's worth it. I think the other pieces of it are actually a discussion with quite a bit of complexity to it, that we've got both positives and negatives from some of the things that we're doing differently over the last 3 years. And given the phrase my mother taught me, I think we want to be careful that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, I understand for sure. Yeah, because I do understand, like, for example, I know that there's people that have babies and they want to put them to sleep, but then they also want to be in the meeting and participate, and this could actually be helpful for people that can't move from their home or wherever they're at, or they're running from work, but they could at least connect. So that's still, participation. So I feel like at least we could have hybrid meetings and not just like fully in person. But that's my opinion. And I'll bring all these concerns up.
I think the tone that what I'm trying to speak to, I think we have a number of solvable problems. I don't think we're in this spot because of bad intentions. And I think there are some fixable problems here, not just bad intentions.
Yeah, certainly. And thanks, Richard. And Michelle?
I just wanted to ask, this more of a question, is sort of where folks did the committee meetings before the pandemic, because my understanding is that it is sometimes difficult to get the space to do committee meetings in person, just because the office space, meeting spaces are quite small.
I wasn't here before. the pandemic, so I wouldn't know how to respond to that. Maybe Bruce?
Yeah, we had,
Emily, if I
we,
can, sorry, Bruce, really quickly.
Go
before
ahead,
you
Marielle.
inter- Yeah, just really quickly, noting time. Maybe Bruce, go ahead and respond. It sounds like this is a
we
point.
had them in the CB12
Please.
office. There's a space there. We had them in the large room for a big meeting like with parks and environmental. So there are spaces. That's not an excuse that we couldn't have meetings in person at the CB12 offices, which is I forget the name of it, the bank building.
Okay.
Thanks all. Shout out to Emily for chairing. Thank you.
I
Did
tried
a
my
wonderful
best.
job as usual. And thanks for bearing with my terrible internet as usual. Yeah, can we get a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting? I
see
need to
a
hear it,
hand.
Richard. Yes.
What, motion to adjourn? Can I get a second?
There you go, Marshall. Can we get a second?
I second.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Just to say
Wait,
as
all in
you know, kind of just
favor?
really quickly.
All in favor, aye.
Hi. Thank you, Marshall.
All right, let's
Let's do it.
get out of here.
Just really quickly, just as a point of just thank you to because I know we're all going on summer break. Just a point of thank you to all of you on the committee. Obviously, we're missing Jay and a couple of other members, but I also want to say thank you to Aisha. And incredibly thankful for her leadership and her work. And I know, Aisha, you will continue to engage with us and we'll continue to learn from you and work with you. So thank you. But again, just thank you, everyone. Just really wanted to acknowledge that and appreciate your work on this committee.
Thank
Have a
you.
wonderful evening.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna say 9:07 for the record.
Yes.
For whoever does minutes, whoever helps us with minutes, I think it's Jay.
I think it's Jay,
9:07.
yep.
Okay.
Thanks, Emily. Good night, everyone. Bye.
Good night, y'all.